Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world's leading global brands. Today, we have a special guest on the show. We're joined by Craig Lemasters, who's an author, entrepreneur, investor, and board member dedicated to helping senior leaders get unstuck on the major growing challenges of their business. Welcome to the show, Craig. How are you?
I'm terrific. Thanks for having me, Chris. Very much been looking forward to this conversation. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's, I think last time we spoke, things were a bit crazy, but settled down now. Whatever crazy is anymore, I don't know.
Exactly.
But I'm doing well. Where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, I'm actually in San Juan, Puerto Rico, of all places. Our company's headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, in the States, but we have some great clients in Puerto Rico, and our travel has opened up a little bit. It's a little easier, so it's been awesome. This is my third trip down here this year, and it feels amazing to meet safely in person with some folks, but to be in the actual community working on things. So, yeah. So no complaints here. It's 83 degrees and sunny. So I actually closed the blinds behind me so nobody can see it. So
you're making us jealous. It's snowing outside. We couldn't even open the door to our Tesla this morning. Like the doors had frozen shut on our car.
I'm sorry. That's all I can say is I'm sorry.
That's all right. Puerto Rico seems to be a really hot destination right now. I see a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs either retiring there or setting up business there. Obviously, I know there's some good tax reasons for that, but it seems to be really like a hot destination right now.
It is, and I think it started with, they have some really creative tax laws here to help grow the country, so that is a material benefit. But I think people get here and realize, particularly if you want a sort of a gateway to Latin America and exporting services elsewhere, I mean, it's a very good location. It's U.S. law, which again just makes it easier for a lot of companies. And I think you'll also see, this is my Puerto Rico commercial since I'm here, I guess, but I think you're going to see a resurgence in manufacturing here.
Really?
A lot of people don't realize this used to be a real drug manufacturing capital back probably 15 years ago. It had some tax advantages there, and then it dwindled away. And I think COVID has really awakened some of our legislators in the U.S. that we need to control the supply chain on some of our drug manufacturing. So you're going to see that come back here too. So for a little country, it's actually quite an exciting time.
Always comes up. Obviously, as a podcast host, I'm also obsessed with other people's podcasts, and so many co-founders or business owners, they're always just like, we're off to Puerto Rico, we're moving. I keep hearing it over and over again.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, if you look at, we used to be called Act 20 and 22, now it's Act 60, but for entrepreneurs, people exporting services, individual investors, they have amazing tax benefits here. So
there's our little plug for Puerto Rico then. We're just getting there for everyone. But tell everyone a little bit more about you, and you've got a really cool journey to where you are today. Tell everyone a bit more about that and how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, it's very kind and probably overstated, because my journey is from my perspective kind of boring, because I worked for the same company for 27 years, which, I say that especially when I speak to groups and people look like me like I'm a freak show. Like,
was you held captive? Was you held captive there?
Yeah, I mean, what's wrong with you? But the reality is, Chris, the company, as you would expect, morphed many times. We were bought and sold, and we bought and sold a bunch of stuff, and I loved it. They just, from a very young age, gave me a chance to run businesses and build businesses, which is really my passion. I mean, I'm an operator, do some this advisory work now, but I'm an operator at heart. And so I grew up in the company, missed a meeting, I guess, and got picked to be CEO, and got a chance to run a big company for 11 years, actually, or as I describe it, as a public company, that's 44 quarters to be exact. And I tell people all the time that I was very blessed to have the best big company job anybody can have. And I mean that. I had a great board, got to grow globally, which is a passion of mine, a lot of digital transformation kind of work. And long story short, did a bit of an odd thing. Actually 4 years ago now, decided to leave public company life. Company had done really well. We had doubled it, which was sort of my mission, and had a great succession plan and really talented people behind me. And my wife and I both decided to walk away from amazing, what most people would say were careers. She's was running a big medical practice, doctor, and we just had other passions. And so we did that. We've been blessed with good health. And so 4 years ago, we both walked away from those roles and started doing things that we were just passionate about. And mine happened to be this sort of wacky GXG idea that I call Unstuck. And that's how I ended up doing it. I've been at it for 4 years. And I told somebody the other day that now I've got the best small company job anybody can have. As you said in the intro, we have an interesting, I think, learning methodology that just helps companies get unstuck. I'm obsessed with this idea of being stuck and unstuck. And so that's how I ended up doing this.
How did that make you feel when you made that, when you kind of sat down and you thought, okay, we're going to do this? How did that make you feel?
It was amazing. I mean, I just, I'm one of these people, and I had a lot of friends that are like, gosh, that's wacky. You know, why do that? Why? That's a pretty good job. I'm like, yeah, it was, but I just felt like the team was ready for that. We had, like I said, amazing succession. The team had been with me for, 15, 16 years. And quite frankly, not to get too deep on the story, I was on a trip to Australia. We were working on some acquisitions, and I wasn't feeling great. And I traveled probably 350,000 miles a year for about 12 years straight.
Wow.
And I realized watching the team, because I couldn't make it to one of the other cities in Australia, and they went and just crushed it and did amazing, and got back to Atlanta, and I thought, you know what? I think if you do really, really well, hopefully as a leader and certainly as CEO, you should get to a place where the team's kind of got this.
Yep.
And yeah, I could do that. But my passion is really about building stuff and teaching leaders just the things that I was fortunate to learn. So I felt great, Chris. I mean, never look back. And told somebody the other day as well on a talk I was doing that they asked me, would you do it again? And I said, you know what? I would do it again. I might even have left a little earlier. Because this is a blast.
Isn't it interesting? Yeah, it's so interesting you say that.
Doing this, yeah. So that's but it's been very fun.
Yeah, I was asking that because I battled with the same thing for I worked in the same company for over 10 years in the same role. And I probably contemplated it. And the only thing I would say is when people ask me that question, I probably would have left earlier if I knew what I knew now. But obviously,
what you know now.
Exactly. But tell everyone about, help us everyone understand the concept of unstuck. What are some of the symptoms that indicate a leader, or their team are stuck?
Yeah, and let me, I guess to start, just sort of define what I mean by stuck. So sometimes it actually offends people when I ask them if they're stuck on stuff. And all I mean by that, and again, I don't use, because I'm not a consultant or advisor by background, I'm an operator by background. So I use pretty simple terms, or maybe I'm not smart enough to make up fancy terms, one of the two, or maybe both. But I started using the word stuck when I was running a company. It's like when you get to the really hard stuff, Chris, let's just be candid. Leaders we get stuck on stuff. And what I mean by that is it's not that we're not trying. It's not that we're not working hard and doing all this activity, but we're not moving very fast. And more importantly, we're not getting to the destination. We're just not getting there. And so I became sort of obsessed with this when I ran this big company, because what I found was anything sort of near to our core business, we just crushed it. I mean, we dominated the markets we were in. We could get a little bit outside of it. But once we got sort of a long step outside of our core, things didn't just slow down. They came to almost a screeching halt. And yet we were working harder. And that just became perplexing to me, like what's missing there. And so that's when I came up and I put it in our book, this idea of the circle of stuck. Because I kept getting asked this question by particularly CEOs that I would meet with when I first started this. And they're like, well, how do I know if I'm stuck? Well, first of all, I can read, if you're a public company, I can read your results and see that you're stuck on some stuff, because you said you wanted to expand to China. And guess what? You're not in China. So by definition, you're stuck. But I had some fun with it. And this has resonated. You can tell me if it resonates with you. You've been doing this a while, right? So the circle of stuck goes like this, where when we want to do something new, and again, I tend to focus on new stuff, technical term for adjacencies and new markets, new distribution, new products, but new stuff. And we tend to go have meetings first. That's our first call to action. right? We like meetings. Everybody does it. And again, this circle of stuck is my story. So I don't know if it's yours or anybody else's, but it seems to resonate. But we have meetings, and after the meetings, we do this mountain of priorities. So they're not really priorities, but it's a lot of emails and a lot of stuff. And then we created this phenomena called the CC file, right? Where we feel better if we carbon copy a lot of people. And it's a really cool symptom of stuck. Is go look at your CC file. And I told this recently, actually, to the CEO, and they stopped me and said, I got a record for you. What are you talking about? He said, I never thought of it this way, but I just saw an email the other day with 347 CCs on it.
What?
And it's like, I never thought about that. That might be a symptom of stuck. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that 347 people are going to get, one thing done super effectively, but you get the idea. And then we tend to create all these buzzwords, is my other favorite. We create, or I did, a whole new vocabulary for hard new things. And these are just distractions. We bring in traditional consulting firms, nothing wrong with that, but we create lots of PowerPoints and we present to each other, we present to the board. But what obsessed me was we never actually get through this and get to the other side. And so that's when I started studying this. And the company I ran, Assurant, when I was introduced, I had a really interesting guy introduced the concept that I ended up building GXG around, and I call it now this wisdom-based learning, that I realized what was missing when I stepped out of my core into the new stuff was this thing called wisdom. And I define wisdom as the intersection of both knowledge and experience, and it has to be both. And so I just started experimenting with it. I was struggling on China, I was struggling on digital transformation. We started to interject this wisdom into the equation, and we got unstuck faster than anything we'd ever do. And it actually changed the way I thought about how leaders should learn sort of forever. So that's the whole history, and we use same methodology today. We have different ways that we implement it, but that's the headset I want everybody to think about today. Is if you're in that circle of stuck, or any of that stuff resonates, or you're not moving fast enough to your new stuff, I really hope that you'll think about this wisdom-based learning idea.
Mm-hmm. I think that
that's
resonates.
How I got here.
I think that relates to everything. You're not even with a work, family life,
Absolutely.
everything as well. I suppose. How do we get unstuck? Then you mentioned the wisdom element.
Yeah.
How do you bring that? What does that look like?
Exactly. Here's the good news is, if you think about those two buckets, if you believe and there's lots of definitions of wisdom, it's just mine, but if you believe that definition, that it's this combination of knowledge and experience, then what we created was just a simple, you can call it 3 or 4 step process to get unstuck, which is, number one, got to have a bunch of humility to do this, right? And this is one of the benefits of COVID, I would say.
100%.
I think this pandemic has driven a lot of us with big egos and thinking we know everything. I'm talking about myself here. Got it all figured out to, oh my, don't have any of this figured out because nobody saw this coming. So number one, why is humility important? Because to get unstuck, I have to admit I don't have that knowledge and experience, right? If I've got my little cup of coffee here in one hand and a pen, I make coffee and I want to make pens, I've got to have the humility to say it's a little different to make pens, and I might not have the knowledge and experience to do that. So number one is wisdom. Most people have it. I think this has brought out more of it. The second thing, Chris, is we have to clearly define the destination. It's shocking to me because I struggle with this. We had strategies and mission and vision statements everywhere. It's like, just tell me, and I call it A to B. Just tell me in your own words what B is. What's the destination? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What is the number? I don't care how you describe it. So we do a lot of work around that. And why that's important is that once we've identified the destination, the third step is the most critical, which is, I would argue, there are usually no more than 3. If you picture an ecosystem, okay, put the destination in the middle, okay? So back to my example, I want to be in the pen business now. Well, if that's my destination, then I would argue there's only 3 sort of ecosystem circles or bubbles of wisdom that are imperatives to be in the pen business. Okay. So knowledge and experience. And then what we do is try to encourage people to make an honest assessment of where you are today. When you look at the organization, how much knowledge and experience you actually have in that component part. So I wanted to be a great digital company. It was an imperative for us. We had to get there. When we did our 3 bubbles, one of them this is 7 years ago, was data. We had to be really good at data. That's pretty important in that. And guess what? When we did a self-assessment and actually scored this, we were like a 3 out of 10 on data. And we do this now. I've done this with hundreds of companies, big companies you would know. And it's shocking. If you do this little probability game on those wisdom buckets, the average score over the last 4 years that I've seen is less than 60%. Now think about that for a second. These are the most important destinations. This is usually the future or part of the future of your company. People are relying on this. Jobs are relying on it. And yet as a leadership team, we have less than a 60% chance of getting there with our wisdom today. So that's the third step, is you got to identify those. And then the fourth is, let's go fill the wisdom gap. That's all it is a wisdom gap. And here's the cool part. The thing I love most about the work that I get to do now is that knowledge and experience, aka wisdom, is everywhere. It's all around us. It might be in your company and you might not know it, but if it's not, it's right outside the door. You just have to be very specific about what you're missing, right? I knew I wanted to be a great digital company, but what I was missing was data. And within data, there were 3 pieces of data analytics that we didn't have wisdom on. And that's what we went and found. And the cool thing is, if you don't have to buy it, you can go borrow this wisdom. And that's really what we do. We do it through advisory boards and one-on-one coaching, but there's lots of ways to do it. And I encourage people, the reason I wrote this little book was to tell people how to go do this. You don't have to have GXG or anybody else. You can do it yourself. We make it more efficient, I think, but I want people to go do it themselves because it's mind-blowing. If you go specifically ask somebody for the wisdom they have that you don't have, and you're prepared, you do it in an intentional way, and you process it correctly and go act on it, that's the Unstuck methodology. I mean, it really is that simple. This is not a sexy business model with a bunch of technology. And how we do all of our work when we're, on flip charts and whiteboards, because the work is really getting in this wisdom from somebody else and transferring here. And we've worked in, I think, 12 industries, about, couple of 100 different types of stuckness, if you will, very complicated technology related stuff to global expansion, lots of HR culture related topics that's near and dear, I know, to your audience. And it doesn't matter. That's what I love this work. It doesn't matter what you're stuck on. The wisdom to help you get through it quickly, it's everywhere, everywhere.
Why do we overcomplicate things?
Wow. I think there's a lot of reasons. But I will tell you the biggest resistance to this pre-COVID was a lack of humility. That we just somehow, and I say that, Chris, because this is what I did. If I was in the coffee business and I decided that strategically we should be in the pen business, we felt like we could be in the pen business. Now, what was that for my company? That was around this whole digital transformation. It was also around China that I mentioned. We had expanded globally very successfully. Got to China. We figured out how to lose a lot of money quickly and continue to do that for 3 years. And so why? Because we were stubborn. We lacked humility to say, you know what, this is different. So I think it's the number one reason we fall into this circle of stuck. It's also why, and the reason I wrote Circle of Stuck is just a sort of a guidepost, and some of them are kind of funny actually, but they're not really. I mean, and again, I really want people to think about it. I challenge leaders every day to think about this stuff. Look at your emails, look at your CC file, look at the words that you've created around the new things you're trying to go do, right? What are you doing with the consulting decks? Again, they can be very helpful, but it's not the end state. It's a mean to the end state, right? And then the last part about it is accountability is the other thing that I think holds us back. When we do new stuff, it's scary, right? And we lack confidence. I would argue.
So you CC everyone in. You CC everyone in, so it's just not all on you.
It makes you feel better, right? I got friends in this journey, so it's not me. It's ridiculous. And have you ever seen? I love this in meetings when we finally grind to the point where we say, "Okay, we've got our destination, the B. We know we can get there. We got some wisdom involved. Now, Chris, I want you to go do that." And see, I'm old enough that maybe some of your audience will remember this, but I call it the moonwalk strategy then, right? Then people start moonwalking back from the accountability.
Whoa. Yeah.
Right? It's like, whoa, wait a minute, that feels risky. Well, why? So then it begs the question, why
did you agree?
It that very capable leaders lack confidence sometimes?
Yeah.
And guess what? This won't surprise you. I would argue it's another symptom of the lack of wisdom. So think about things that you're extremely confident in. And I would argue anything around this HR practice and the work you've been doing for quite a while now, your confidence is soaring. But if I came to you and said, Chris, start a pen company for me tomorrow, right? You might even say, I can do that. I'm a smart guy, and you can, but you don't have a lot of confidence, so you're going to slow down. And the wisdom is what speeds it up. We actually trademarked this rapid cycle learning because that's what happens. You put people in the room and this wisdom mixture starts going in there. If you facilitate it right, it's so much fun for me to watch leaders' confidence just soar. And again, this is not like PowerPoint strategy. This is practical stuff. It's like, hey, you got 4 plants. You only need 2. Now, how do I know that? Why can I make that decision? How can I make that decision faster? Well, if I have 3 people sitting in the room that have done exactly that before me, do you think my confidence is going to go up? Of course it is. And they're telling you based on wisdom, their knowledge and experience, saying, hey, Chris, it's okay if you close those 2 plants. Here's what I did. Here's why it worked. Here's some things to think about. Here's the pitfalls. And guess what? It's just so much fun to watch the people light up in these meetings, and we move at a speed we never imagined. And that's really the exciting part about the Unstuck methodology is how quickly we can move through this with the wisdom next to us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely love it. I love it. There's so much to unpack there. Well, I definitely seen throughout this whole crisis, you're right, because no one's got the answers to this. So for once, people had to turn around, and CEOs, even including myself, say, I don't know. I don't have the answers. And
of course.
And I sat down with the team and said, this is our options. And then we made a group decision on, whether we were going to kind of furlough everyone, our employees, and kind of wait it out, or whether we were going to reinvent the business. And it was hard for me to admit that I didn't have the answer. It was, it did hurt my ego a little bit. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. But what were the options? What were the other options to do it? And I feel like that is almost like a superpower of mine now, to be, vulnerable and to admit to the team that I have the answers. And since then, actually, I feel like we've come a lot stronger as a business.
I'm sure.
And it's like, oh, wow, you don't have to, Chris doesn't have all the answers. And that's all. And it also means that my employees understand that they don't have to have all the answers, and they will ask each other for help. So it's not easy, but I do think that's one of the silver linings throughout all of this. But I've always done one of the things that you mentioned, whether I've read it somewhere or by accident, but whenever I've started a new venture or I've wanted to learn something, the first thing I've always done is reach out to people. When I needed to learn how to video edit and to create this podcast and figure out what editing software, and the first thing I did is just look around my network and said, who does this?
Yeah, exactly.
And went and asked them. Similar with building our website and other things. Why do you think people are so afraid of reaching out to people and asking them, for an hour of their time? I suppose it can be intimidating. Why should someone want to participate in one of these conversations?
Yeah, I think part of it is what you went through this year, right? You got over the humility curve. And I love your transparency, Chris, that it was kind of hard on you, right? And that's okay. But what happened on the backside of it, now you have an energy level and enthusiasm about doing this over and over. And I think everybody's intuition generally is what yours is. Wow, I should ask other people. But I do think that traditionally our egos don't really allow us to do that. And so over time, what's happened, there's this whole cottage industry around networking that's sprung up. And in my mind, there's nothing wrong with networking events. I mean, I think they're fun when we can do those again in person, unless you're Zoom Zoom is super fun, but in person, they're kind of fun. But that whole industry cropped up, I think, to try to address this. But here's the challenge with it. If you put me in a room with 100 people and I've got to find the one person that understands web analytics to help me get unstuck, how do I do that? How do I approach them? What do I ask them? It's like anything else in life. We got to be intentional about it. And so what I get excited about is we just created an intentional way to do this. Again, whether you do it on your own or we help you or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. But if you do it intentionally and you're very specific with the ask, it de-stresses the whole thing. And all you have to do, and I always absolutely almost beg people that listen in on these to go do, is just try it one time. Draw the ecosystem of the wisdom that you're missing, be very specific, and go ask one person in your network, or better yet, go ask a complete stranger. We do this, our team does it all day, all long to build our advisory boards and our coaching practice. And we love reaching out to strangers because our success rate of getting complete strangers to do this kind of work is incredibly high, in the 90 percentile. And the reason is, and here's the good news, people love to share their wisdom. They love to share their wisdom. Unfortunately, we usually don't ask, or we don't ask in the right way, and we're not specific about it. And when you do, the success rate of people doing it is amazing. And then the other thing I chatted about.
Give us an example of that. Give us an example of how you would go about doing that. Like what is the language? There's a particular questions.
Oh yeah. So the way we like to do it, again, starting with that ecosystem visual, is actually getting very granular, and we actually draw the persona. So we want to draw the persona of what does the knowledge and experience look like to achieve that, and then our research team finds people that has that, and then our outreach is basically one where we want to explain the wisdom-based learning methodology just to see if you buy into it and you think it's a good idea. And then we're going to politely ask them, would you try, and ours are 50-minute conversations to share this with somebody. What do you get in return? Well, we have these boards that we build, and if you want to be on a board, we can do that. And obviously there's fees and other thing, and we can do some coaching stuff that you can get, some small fees for. And you know what's amazing, Chris, is most people after 4 years of this want to interact and do this. Most would do it for free. And here's why. This whole spirit of reciprocity that you talk and read about, there's amazing research now about this. Wayne Baker at University of Michigan, I mentioned in the book because he's done great work on this. It's alive and well. And once people experience, and we're kind of the broker to have them experience that, you just want to do more of it. I mean, who doesn't want to share their wisdom? What we recommend is again, intentionality, very specific requests, and then facilitate it. Mm-hmm. If it's just a ramble or
generic, then
we start talking about 100 things, people get frustrated. So we're big fans on process on this. And that's really all we've brought to this. I love what you said earlier, just real quick, because that you've done this and you've done it intuitively. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, you're a great leader. You've built amazing companies. You're doing it intuitively. And I told somebody the other day, I said, I'm the only person that created a new business with the oldest stuff ever made, which is called education. If you look at the history of education, right? Yeah. How did people learn? If you go back and whether it's secular or biblical history, right? People learn from the other wise people that went before them.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't invent this, and you're doing it intuitive. We just bring a process to it and intentionality.
Yeah.
And that's really what I describe in the book is just follow this process, try it with one person. It will blow you away. I think most people that have done it in the last 4 years, they don't turn back.
And for those, I completely relate to what you're saying as well, because, we've had over 300 guests on the show. And people always ask me, how do you get the guests? And my message, essentially, when I send it, mainly through LinkedIn, some email, is I'm not going to go for the whole message, but really it's on the lines of, would you be open to sharing your knowledge and experience on the show to help other HR practitioners that are on their career journey? And the reply is, of course, I'll be happy to help and support other practitioners in HR by sharing my journey experience, because they want to give back, and that's what they say to me. Thank you, Chris, for letting me have the opportunity to give back.
Absolutely.
So that's
I even mentioned before we started today, because again, when I came up to the organization, I didn't come up in HR, but particularly when I became a CEO, my CHRO business partner became literally the most important person in my team. Now, hopefully my former CFO and others aren't listening right now, but I was always very vocal about it. And I will tell you this, in my practice today, when we build advisory boards on all this new stuff, it's shocking how many CEOs, C-suiters at very good companies you would recognize, they don't even think about having that seat represented. And it's one of the things that we're insistent on. If we're going to go work on, I don't care what it is, technology, AI, digital transformation, doesn't matter to me, strategic sales, this is a cultural shift in the company usually, and you've got to have this seat at the table. So I want your CHRO at the table, and then we're going to bring one in from our network that's going to help give them some outside knowledge and experience to make it work. And I'll be candid with you. I've had arguments with clients on this. Like, why do we need that?
Isn't that crazy though, that you have to justify that?
You've got to be kidding me. So that's why I told you when I come on here, I'd do this all day if I could, because it's so important to me to hopefully encourage HR leadership on this whole business partner idea. And if you're not, then go figure out a way to be, and be very bold with your leader or your CEO even.
Yeah, we need to remove HR business partner though. It's just business partner. Yeah. Right? We don't have, a marketing business partner or a supply chain business partner, but we made up HR business partner. I think it's just, they're just a business partner. We don't have to have
and I
HR.
never thought about any of my CHROs. I had two amazing ones in my 11-year tenure, and both of them, I never thought about them as a human resources function.
Yeah.
You know what they were? They were actually, this is why it was so important to me, more than the numbers even, is because most of our work is around execution, obviously. Once we know the B, how do we get there faster and better? So it's just execution. And I would argue the single biggest inhibitor once we get into that around execution is the people and leadership aspect of this. Well, who better qualified than this very group of highly skilled and highly trained people? And again, I'm just shocked at how many organizations don't leverage that. We just think that part just is a given and it's going to flow. And it's actually where we should start. So it's near and dear to my heart, to say the least.
No, it's just great to hear. And if they didn't realize the value of HR, I think after the last year, they probably will.
Amen to that. I mean, it's what a struggle and stress it's been, not only on employees, but leadership teams as well. Yeah. So if it's not a great partnership, it sure better be as we emerge from this. And I think it is. I think part of the encouraging thing I've seen, I think it has moved the needle on this partnership.
I agree. What about personally? Because I can tell you right now, I felt personally stuck during the last year on multiple occasions. Our daily rhythms have been disrupted. Where and how we work's been disrupted. Our mental health and well-being. It is just so many things. Any tips for listeners around how they can apply this methodology in their personal life?
And you mentioned this earlier, which I really appreciate, Chris. I think this wisdom, confidence, unstuck thing is even more important when we're in stressed times. And if I look at just my own situation, I'm older than you. So that just by definitions means I've experienced a few more things and maybe in some areas more wisdom. So when I think about how I've dealt with the pandemic, and I would really ask people to reach out when times are stressed to people that have just gone before us a little bit. But I had the good fortune of working through 9/11, like a lot of leaders. Hurricane Andrew, which was a big one here in the States, devastated our home office. We had the financial crisis of the 80s, the bubble. So I've had the pleasure of leading through 3 or 4 of these. Is COVID different? It's a little bit.
I like the way you said pleasure, by the way. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's when we learn and grow.
It's true.
The only reason that I feel comfortable talking to executives now about this and maybe some ideas of how we lead differently through this and the stuff that you just mentioned is because I got a chance to do that. And I was fortunate to learn a lot and come out the other side. And now we get to do it again with COVID. And newsflash, it's not the last time. I mean, this is whether it's a health pandemic or natural disaster or whatever, it's not the last time. So I would just say on a personal level, I think under stressful conditions, it's more important than ever to find and activate that wisdom of others during these times. And it's so much fun to hear your story because you went and did it. You did it intuitively. Hey, I'm going to go digital with my company. I'm going to do all this. What did you do? You went out and found some wisdom to do that. You probably had a great basis, so you didn't even need a bunch of it. But look at where you are now. I mean, it's amazing work you're doing. And I would argue the next 5 years, your company will grow more dramatically than it would have. And my experience on that, when our company was destroyed by Hurricane Andrew in Miami back in the early 90s. Coming out of that it was the hardest year we went through. We had to relocate the company. Employees had to move it because there was no power. 80% of our employee base lost their homes.
Wow.
We had to pay them in cash. This is a public company, by the way. We experienced the most dramatic 5-year growth coming out of that in our entire history. And I would argue it wasn't our strategies. It wasn't our cool products. It was that experience that brought us together. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll see that in your company from what I've heard.
People really bond over that, right? That shared experience. And they're not just turning up for the 9 to 5, right? There is no such thing as a 9 to 5 anymore. They're going above and beyond, right? It's those,
Yeah,
you can't.
It changes people, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to change you. And I think the other thing on the personal side that relates to this that I see happening, and it's just I've been I don't know, sort of obsessed with this for a long time, is I would argue most leaders never really know the people they work with and that work for them. We know a lot about them. And that's very different than really knowing. What I mean by that is pretty heart level stuff. What do they really think? What do they really care about? How do they process information? How do they make decisions? That takes time. You can't do that.
How do they feel? Right? How are they feeling? How often do we have in that conversation? Now we are a lot more, of course.
Now we are. It's interesting. I mean, even seeing people's, screensavers in their houses. I was teasing my team because we got to get back in our office pretty early in Atlanta. The South's been a little easier, and we're very fortunate. But we were joking. We get in, and I'm like, gosh, I miss some of your artwork that I looked at every day. And I got to know people differently.
Interesting, isn't it?
Right? And much deeper. And those are important things that I hope we don't lose coming out of the COVID stuff, right? When we do get back together, let's not lose that, because the deeper we know each other, the harder we can push and help each other get to these destinations. And I think it's the game changer of all the stuff that I've seen that's positive coming out of this.
I agree.
For people like you and your story that have taken advantage of this and really gotten to know the folks they work with and do some different things, I think it's a game changer. I think you'll see it the next 5 years.
It's a big shift, isn't it? Because I remember when I first became a manager, my director at the time would say, they're not your friends. They're your employees. You don't go out. You don't go out with them on the weekends. You don't spend time with them outside of work, and unless you're going to go have a drink and it's work related. And for me, I was like, I'm spending more than half my life with these people. I want to get to know them, and if that means me showing that I'm not feeling well or I'm having a bad day and being vulnerable and vice versa, then so be it. It just didn't feel right. It was a real struggle for me for the first few years, and then I got to the point where I was like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do it my way, and it was quite going against the grain, of course. But I was like, I just can't be this kind of force. It's like I wasn't being authentic. I was kind of portraying what I thought a manager and a leader should look like and sound like, if that makes sense.
I couldn't agree
and
more.
It was just,
I couldn't agree more.
It was horrible. It was absolutely
horrible. It's a whole separate conversation we can have someday. But this whole work-life balance thing drives me crazy, Chris. I mean, we've been given amazing lives. Part of that we do our vocation, part of it we do other things, but this idea that there's this beautiful clean separation and we're different people, and I think it's nonsense. And again, I see that as a benefit coming through this thing right now, where the great leaders have really dug in and gotten to know folks and realized that every individual is different. We have different things that motivate us. And what I care most about is how we process information. I would argue that most conflict in organizations is not really the decisions that are made. It's that we don't understand how people got there. And here's the funny part. We don't ask them.
That's such a good question, by the way.
Hey, you decided to get in the pen business. Can we go to lunch and just explain it to me?
Why don't we do that? Is it because we're worried about the answer we're going to get, like, or you feel like you're being confrontational? Because I feel like that's quite a refreshing question. But again, the good news is, I certainly, we've been harping on this in our practice, and I see it happening where it's like, wait a minute, first of all, we have time, we have Zoom, it's here all day, all night, or whatever you use. But more importantly, this realization that if we do ask, it's pretty amazing what people usually say, because it wasn't a personal attack on me that they made the decision. That's where we usually go, right? That's true.
That's or I wasn't included. Or, and all of a sudden we listen and it's like, wow, that's amazing. I mean, somebody asked me recently, because we had this great growth in the company that I ran in hard times, and they're like, wow, it must have been really smart products and strategies. So yeah, I think we were probably pretty good at that. But the way I think that, and I didn't start out this way, but the way that we finally unleashed people, and you start having those conversations and you realize, wow, this person unleashed can go do things I never dreamed of doing. And the stuff that bothered me because I wasn't maybe making those decisions or doing it the same way, all of a sudden didn't bother me because it was better. But I never took the time to ask them. I just got mad or annoyed. And then I went and told the third person about that person. I don't know if that happens anywhere else, but
I'm sure it
happened in my company a lot. And we started to get rid of that. And that's when the growth took, because it didn't really matter what the problem was, or what challenge, or what competitor, or if we went into a new market. It didn't matter then, right? Because we got rid of most of that nonsense, and we started actually caring about people. I know it's not something we're supposed to say sometimes, but it's like we really cared about each other and how we were doing and the mental health of our coworkers.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something I hear every day, right, from HR executives. Is, I say to them, "What's your, what does good look like?" And it's always around, unleashing the full potential of of every employee, right? A lot of the work they do is really aiming towards that end goal. And I think what you've hit upon is definitely one of those key components. I
hope so, because I just think the opportunities ahead right now are amazing. I mean, really, as a society, you'd argue the world, because nobody is literally yet immune to COVID, right? I mean, it's everywhere. And I do think that's exciting in one sense, that we've all kind of been through this together. And I do think the upside of what we've learned can dramatically change the way we work and how we lead and how we work with each other. And I think the other thing I've seen, Chris, I don't know if you've heard this a lot, but it's made most people be much more introspective. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it important to me or to anybody else? And having conversations with some pretty hard charging leaders in our practice that I never thought I would hear that from. And I think that's really good news, actually. And quite frankly, some are making changes and deciding, no, this really hit me, and it wasn't. And the ones that are staying are doing it differently, and that feels pretty good.
I've seen so much of that. I'm so happy you brought. Many CHROs actually, just in my world, have walked away during this time for various reasons, but many of them are understanding this actually isn't really aligned with my why, my purpose, really what I got to get up and do every day. And then obviously there's others on the bad side of obviously kind of their leadership team, the way they reacted during this crisis. They also walked away, which is a whole nother conversation as well. But many people have had a lot of time to think whilst being stuck at home to themselves, thinking, do I really want to, even me with our company, what is our why? What is our purpose? Why am I getting out of bed and doing this every day? Because sometimes we get just caught in the motion of getting up and just doing it every day. We're just kind of just going through life on autopilot. Whereas this has just stopped everyone dead in their track, and it's forced people to reflect, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no better equalizer, and although it's recovered, but that first period of time where everybody's quote net worth went down about 40% almost immediately. It was a great equalizer, because I think particularly for those that are chasing just financial rewards, it was such a great equalizer, because it wasn't like I'm a worse investor than you, Chris. It was like, no, everybody got whacked. And back to what you said earlier, and it was all uncontrollable. And it's like, wow. If you didn't pause and rethink that as a number one motivation now, that ain't going to happen. And I think most people have. Mm-hmm. Most people have. Back to the whole purpose question. And again, I think this is tremendous upside, because I think the leaders that want to run organizations as we get through this, what I'm seeing is a very different headset that I think is extremely exciting. I think is going to be better places to work. I think we're going to care more broadly about the people we work with. And again, I'm a results person. I don't think it's going to dilute. I think it'll actually enhance results. And again, I have a sample sort of one in a dramatic way, but when I watched a company grow, I mean, ridiculous growth after Hurricane Andrew, I just saw it firsthand, and how much we cared about each other and helped each other. And it was a pretty special time.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to put that it's hard to quantify that, isn't it?
Oh, it's so hard. It's hard to write a case study about it. We all want, we want a Venn diagram or a 2x2 and all that.
It comes across really fluffy otherwise, and really, untangible.
And I think it's just the opposite. I mean, the whole topic around culture is one of my absolute favorites. And I think this should be at the heart of all the cultural conversations, which is, what do we really care about, and how are we going to help each other get there? And only taking people on that journey that believe in that. And again, we've seen a lot of that as well. I'm sure you have, where people have either sort of weeded themselves out of organizations, or now we see some of this change happening that, hey, we're a different company now. And I guess in your case, it's going to be the same way. It's like you have changed directions and you're doing it a little different. That's not going to be for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will be happier over there, and some people you will need to move on. And we see that happening a lot right now. I think that is super helpful. Back to what you said earlier, we just get so used to, we come in and we do the same thing, and we get scope creep and more people. And then you look around one day and it's like, nobody's really into this. And not really that
going through the motions. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I felt in my last company. As much as I loved the people I work with, it was great experience, but I felt like I was just coming in and just going for. I've said this so many times on the show, but I'll say it for you, is that I remember seeing the Simon Sinek Start With Why TED Talk, and it, in the golden circle, and what is your why? And I couldn't answer the question, because I remember sitting in the office going, what is my why? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And the fact that I couldn't answer that, from that day onwards, I couldn't get out of my head. Like every day I would get on the train, I'd get out for work, and I'd be like, and I just couldn't get it out. I was like, why am I doing this? Because it started out because I needed a job, right? And then it became, I want to be a manager, and I became a manager. Then it became, and then I was just like, but why am I doing this? And I couldn't get rid of it after that point. And it's not a negative thing, because there's so many companies I work with now, they do, purpose training, or, workshops. And through those trainings, they will have, in some cases, hundreds of employees decide to leave. And that's not a negative. That's good. It's great for them and for you. It's a positive thing. You're actually doing a service there as well. But I'm conscious of time. I also want to be interested to know, anything that, what are some of the things that you're doing now that you've kind of developed throughout the last year, that you've incorporated into your routine, that you're going to carry over, that you have carried over this year into 2021?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I look at it very simply, Chris, that I better be eating my own food. If I'm out trying to help other people with what we're making, I better be eating it myself. And it's been fun for our firm now to really, like I said, eat our own cooking. And we've been using our wisdom-based methodology because I think it's, again, more important than ever when we're under stress. It's been different and stressful for all of us. So we've been doing a lot ourselves. And as we've gotten into new offerings and new things, it's been really, really exciting to see for my team the business model actually come alive. But some of the specifics that I really care about from this past year is being much more attuned to the mental health status of our folks that we work with, our clients, myself. I think it's at potentially epidemic proportions of challenges there, and back to that. So I'm really focused on really knowing people, really focused on communication. I have a simple formula for communication during stressful times. Do as much as you think you possibly should, and then double it. Just double it. And that's not
never over-communicate.
Super scientific, but it works. And then the third thing is on the communication piece. I think the biggest stress creator right now is we're giving people 3 priorities with 10 subsets under each one, which according to my math is 30. And we do that because we have access 7x24 with the video and all this stuff. I think the leaders that are separating themselves right now are doing a great job of saying there's 3 things that matter in this company. Back to my obsession with that destination, pick the 3 things that matter, go tell the organization this is what matters, and it's going to cascade into the company. I promise you that will de-stress the organization more than virtual happy hours and anything else that you do. You'll get a virtual standing ovation if you do that. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to do personally, and that we're teaching and trying to share with our leaders that we work with, really every day.
Amazing. Well, I feel like this is super timely as well, the work that you're doing, and so impactful. That. So I'm glad that we managed to connect, and talking about networking, that's how we managed to be here today, right?
That's right. Exactly.
We only met each other a few weeks ago, and here we are doing this show. That's the power of connecting and reaching out. But for everyone listening, where can they learn more about you if they want to get in touch? And also, where can they grab a copy of the book as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the book's on Amazon. No surprise, the title is Unstuck, how to activate and leverage the wisdom of others. And yeah, so our website is gxg.co. Put tons of content out there. Again, I want the methodology to be very public and everybody use it. And best place to find. And I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. Again, we put some content out there and try to stay fairly current there. So would love to connect through any of those mediums. If I can help anybody, please reach out, even if it's just a conversation. I love talking about this stuff, and I really thank you, Chris. Again, I think this body of work that you're focused on and what your sweet spot is amazing, and I just see you making a difference in this area that's super important to me. So I really appreciate you having me on today.
I appreciate it too. Well, look, enjoy your lovely weather. I'm not going to pretend I'm not going to pretend that I'm not jealous as well. And let's stay in touch. And for everyone listening, if you enjoyed the video and this podcast, whether you're watching it or listening to it, wherever you are, please, like, comment, share, tag in some colleagues, some leaders that you feel will gain value from listening. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day, Craig, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. All right.
Likewise. Thanks, Chris. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.